Yesterday was a fun, good day here on Locked On Nationals, but today we get into what went wrong with your Washington Nationals, and unfortunately, I have to admit, there's a laundry list.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11, and as well as a show page at LO_Nationals for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And while you're at it, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast. Later on in today's show, I can tell you this. Today's episode is all about what went wrong for your Washington Nationals in 2024. Simple as that. And unfortunately for you, there is a big, long list. But there is a little bit of a conclusion at the end of today's show with a prospect down in the minors that is looking pretty damn well sitting here today on October 24th. So we'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's show. But we get in with discussing the bad of the Washington Nationals. So before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So let's jump right into it as we get into a lot of bad, unfortunately. Not a lot of bad, a decent amount of bad. Enough bad to take up about 25 minutes of this podcast. That's what I'll say. Yesterday, we had around 22, 23 minutes of good. This season was a lot of good, but also there was still a lot of bad. The Nationals are 71-91 for the second straight season. So let's jump into it. The first bad, in my opinion, there was no staff changes. Yet again. And the highlight of that, or the low light, is Darnell Coles. When Kevin Long left the Nationals back in 2021 to take over the Phillies hitting coach job, that left a huge hole. In my opinion, Kevin Long is probably the brightest hitting coach in all of baseball, which, by the way, Phillies fans are trying to run him out of town right now. Please do that. That will not happen. They've already announced him coming back, but please run him out of town and have him come back to this staff. Since 2022, though, with Darnell Coles being the hitting coach, think of all the main stats. Slug. Well, back in 2022, the Nationals, they were near dead last yet again in 2022. They had a team total of a 377 slug. That was 24th in all of baseball. OBP in 2022. Not good either. 18th in all of baseball. But even kind of getting into those preliminary stats, you see it by the individual performances. It's not that the Nationals have not had talent since 2022. They haven't had the best of talent. And by the way, I will say this about Coles. You should not expect a huge jump in any offensive performance because of a single coach. Do they make a difference? Absolutely. For better or for worse. But let's look at this. The Nationals have not had that much talent up in the major league level during this rebuild. Asking and blaming Darnell Coles for every single thing over the last 3 seasons, I think is unfair. But that can stand true while also balancing the second plate here. We need a fresh kind of mind in this building as far as hitting goes. And I think this changed my mind this season with Sean Doolittle and what he did for this Nationals pitching staff. The Nationals pitching staff, it wasn't more so about what Jake Irvin did or Mackenzie Gore, the high talented guys. It was about guys like DJ Hers, Mitchell Parker, the guys you didn't really expect too much of coming up and making a big impact, doing better than what they were doing in AAA Rochester. I think Sean Doolittle made a difference. You need a difference maker in the hitting room here. And I don't think Darnell Coles is that. So that is my number one, what went wrong with this team. He came with the same staff. Not much happened. You saw a lot of regression, and we'll get into that. But secondly, your 2 offseason acquisitions. 1, Joey Gallow, and 2, Nick Senzel. Joey Gallow didn't return to his old self. And Nick Senzel, well, he was DFA'd after just not being good. Joey Gallow, now he is a broken hitter. Let's just be honest. He is. You can watch him at the plate and you can understand, well, this guy isn't his 2017 self. He's not an all-star anymore. He plays like he's not an all-star. He's a stud defensively. But at the plate, that is where his value lies. Now, Joey Gallow is a great defender, and he's going to find himself on a big league roster come spring training. But sitting here today, Joey Gallow may have taken another step back as far as his offensive progressions. That was a big failure. Nick Senzel as well. You take a chance on him, hoping to have that Jeimer Candelario effect, where you have your third baseman. Maybe he turns it around, and you trade him at the deadline. That was a complete, utter disaster. Now, he wasn't a clubhouse mess, the way that some people may think that, considering the Mackenzie Gore incident and all the other things surrounding Nick Senzel. But those were 2 epic failures. 2 of your biggest acquisitions from this last winter came and flopped right in front of your face. Jesse Winker was a success story. He was invited to spring training out of nowhere, signed a minor league contract. He was your left fielder all season long and was really good and got you a pretty decent return at the trade deadline. That's a success. Nick Senzel, Joey Gallow, utter failure. Those were 2 big signings from this last offseason that completely flopped. Completely. Sitting here today, you can't tell me that Joey Gallow is going to have big league kind of production. He will get another chance because of his defense. But the Joey Gallow of years past hitting 35, 40 home runs, that's of the past. And unfortunately, that did not come back this season with the Nationals. And also, unfortunately, you continue to pay him because his contract is deferred. So, not great. Third on this list, Kade Cavali. Kade Cavali didn't pitch in a single game this season for the Nationals. And also, something that has to do with pitching, Josiah Gray needs Tommy John. That's out of our control, but still, that was the worst part of 2024. Then on top of that, Kade Cavali had Tommy John surgery in 2023. You know, we were talking all offseason. He'll be back, hopefully making a difference on this roster come mid-June, late July at the latest. Never made a major league start. Made a handful of rehab assignments, looked decent. His fastball velocity was not there, was then shut down, said he had dead arm, had a flu at one point, which is probably true. I'm not saying it's wrong by any stretch of the imagination. The flu did go around the Nationals clubhouse there for a little bit. But that was another failure of this team. Kade Cavali is supposed to be a big part of this rotation moving forward. He just is. And you did not see that this season. You didn't see him at all up in the major league roster. I don't think the Nationals could handle that any better, but they certainly put it on a tee of how to handle it in the not best way possible. Because going into this past season, rather, Kade Cavali was going to be a big part of the rotation. We said, or at least I said, it's okay. You don't need to add starting pitching this season. You have Kade Cavali coming back healthy. Tommy John surgery. Everything looks up. He's throwing his bullpens. He's getting ramped up. You never saw him pitch one time at the major league level. That was one of the worst things of 2024, and that was what went wrong for your Washington Nationals. But unfortunately, there's more. And in my opinion, these next few, or at least 2 of the next 4, are the biggest issues of 2024. I'll tell you what that is. But before we get into it, I'm going to tell you guys about some of our very good friends over at FanDuel. And of course, I have told you all about FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can get on the action with our friends at FanDuel. A big return on FanDuel, which, by the way, it's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And if you haven't started with FanDuel, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is guaranteed. You can place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Maybe this weekend you've got a little bit of a hunch that the Caleb Williams-led Bears beat the Commanders. I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say they do. You can do a money line bet and anytime touchdown for DJ Moore, because last time he was here, he torched us. All you have to do is get started with FanDuel.com, which is America's #1 sportsbook. Download FanDuel.com. Again, visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Now let's get back into it with what went wrong for your 2024 Washington Nationals. Before we get into that, though, again, search us up wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Nationals on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and more. Wherever you get your podcast, that is where you'll find us, and hit that subscriber button. Also on YouTube, you can see my new studio setup. So get into it, and we'll have that for you every single day. Another thing that went wrong for the Nationals, in my opinion, one of the biggest storylines that wasn't really discussed all too much was Keeber Ruiz. Keeber Ruiz regressed this season offensively. And he got hot in the second half of the season. I understand that point. But when you look at his numbers overall, and you really kind of take a deep dive into it, Keeber Ruiz was a well below average hitter. In 2023, he batted .260, a .717 OPS. Relatively respectable. This season, batted .229, a .619 OPS. His slugging went down from a .409 in 2023 to a .359 this year. His OBP was at .260 compared to a .308 last year. All of his numbers were a huge decline. And also, Keeber Ruiz, defensively speaking, was atrocious, to say the least. I don't know what is going to be the fix as far as Keeber Ruiz goes, but I can give you these stats as far as catching goes. His pop time, 3rd percentile this season. His blocks above average, 31st percentile. His framing did improve to a 42nd percentile, but still, I think it was a lot worse than that. You saw plenty of videos out there where the framing was simply not there. If you were to check out Keeber Ruiz's stats, even on the offensive side of things, his whiff percentage is elite, 98th percentile. His strikeout percentage, elite, 98th percentile. But then on the other side of this, his walk rate, 2nd percentile. His chase percentage, 4th percentile. His bat speed, 3rd percentile. Hard hit percentage, 4th percentile. Barrel percentage, 6th percentile. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a bad major league hitter and a bad defensive catcher. Keeber Ruiz signed that pretty decent size extension going into 2023, had a solid season, but still had some inconsistencies last season as well. I thought this was going to be the year that he breaks out. He got hit with the flu, was out for a few weeks, lost 20 pounds, gained it back, did look better in the second half, but still overall, he regressed. That is supposed to be one of your big pieces of this Nationals rebuild. He was the first prospect alongside with Josiah Gray that we were like, we get to see this guy every day. We are excited about him. A top 30 prospect in all of baseball. You get to be excited about Keeber Ruiz, a power hitting catcher, switch hitter, who has got, at the time, great plate discipline, which he still does, but he doesn't take walks, and he chases too much. Keeber Ruiz has regressed in both offense and defensive categories. That is an issue. That is a huge, huge wrong point in 2024, in my opinion. And in fact, dare I say, you should be concerned. That's where I sit today as far as Keeber Ruiz goes. And we'll talk about him a lot coming this offseason. I'll tell you that much. Also on this list, not that big of a deal, but it's what went wrong. Trey Lipscomb did not establish himself as a utility player or a building block. Heading into spring training, Trey Lipscomb was obviously on our radar. He had a great year last season, winning a Gold Glove down in the minor leagues as a utility guy. Had a really solid season at the plate as well. Trey Lipscomb had a great spring training. I was calling for him to start over Luis Garcia Jr. on opening day at second base. And hell, I was calling for him to start over at third base as well for Nick Senzel. Neither of those things happened. He got called up after Nick Senzel broke his thumb on opening day, was out for a few weeks there. He did not look the part, got sent down, got brought back up, did not look the part, sent down, got brought back up, did not look the part. You should not believe in Trey Lipscomb, but the hype surrounding him. The Nationals are very high on this guy, and for good reason. Preliminary speaking, he's got good numbers. He's really good defensively. He's got some upside at the plate. And I think he could be something down the road. But I thought this would be the season. He had the opportunities right then and there. He never took them. He never ran with them. He looked good defensively. But at the plate, he was bad. And if you're not going to be somewhat decent offensively, like a Jacob Young type, you're probably not going to find many opportunities up in the majors. Now, he could come back, make some adjustments, which he will, by the way. He's a big leaguer. He's going to make an impact in the bigs at some point in time. But the expectations that we had for this guy going into 2024, he did not reach those this season. Probably the second biggest concern and one of the worst things of 2024. And this is, again, another discussion to get into in a lot deeper way than just this. Nationals ownership still seems to be in limbo. Now, you might be saying, well, they said they weren't going to be selling. They did say that. But at this point in time, do you really think the Lerner family is all in at this point? This is going to be the offseason to tell. If they are all in, they will realize we need a veteran arm and we need a veteran bat to be in the middle of this lineup. They can change this narrative that they aren't the best ownership. They can do it easily, in my opinion, by doing those two things and investing into the big league lineup. They've allowed Mike Rizzo to change up the front office, get more analytical guys and more analytical things into this organization. I went down to West Palm Beach, their spring training facilities. It is an awesome facility. Share with the Astros. They've got all the advanced analytics there, right there for you, for use. Things that they did not have in years past. But they don't seem to be fully bought in. You cannot tell me, with Ted Leonsis speaking publicly about wanting to buy the Nationals, that they don't have maybe a toe out the door at this point. If you are going to own this team, to own this billion-dollar company, I want you all in, 10 toes down, in the floor, in the meetings, be involved. It doesn't seem like that's the point. That's the case here. It just doesn't. And I think going into this offseason, the fans, if you do not spend talking about the Lerners, this fan base will turn. Because I, myself here, Ryan Clary speaking, I have given them so many opportunities, but this is my final straw. If you do not invest into this team in any sort of way, we will have issues. And not just me, but there are, a million fans out there, a couple million fans out there that will have the exact same issue. If you do not invest into this organization, the fan base, it might riot. Speaking of owners and ownership, there's one more issue that I do want to get into. But before we do that, let me tell you guys about our friends over at Gametime. And of course, Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and you can pick out any specific game that you want to. Gametime will have flash zone deals and easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. And my favorite feature of Gametime is I can see the view from my seat. So if you pick out a seat over at Northwest Stadium, there are some weird columns that block the stadium view there. You can see that view directly from your phone over at our friends at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. One final thing, two final things. I do want to get into what went wrong for the Nationals. Number one, Masson. Masson is still an issue. I'm going to try to get Matt Wyrick from the Baltimore Sun. He used to cover the Nationals here for NBC Sports Washington back in the day. Matt Wyrick broke this news that Masson has a new owner or a new CEO or GM, whatever you want to call him. And they hinted at the fact that they will not be breaching any contract agreement with the Nationals. This is going to be a dogfight till the end of time. It has no end in sight. And I know this does not have anything to do with on-field success here, but hear me out, it kind of does. Masson, for quite some time, has kind of held back money from this Nationals team. The Nationals could be making a lot more money and have a lot better contract with a new network out there, let's say Monumental Sports or local Fox 5, whatever it is. The Nationals could have that. They could have their own network. I don't know what the options are, but one thing is for sure, Masson still being a thing in the year of 2024 and going into 2025 and likely going into 2026 as well, is going to be a huge issue for this organization down the line, and it doesn't sit well with me. One of the last things that went wrong in 2024, and I will say it's not so wrong, kind of is. Robert Hassel III did not make his Major League Baseball debut, and he just simply has not looked like himself. Now, with that said, I will say this. Robert Hassel III, he has been killing it in the Arizona Fall League yet again. This guy does it in the Fall League for whatever reason out there. This is his third stint in the Arizona Fall League. 2 years ago, he broke his hamate bone. Last year, looked pretty good as well. But this season, he is breaking out in the Fall League. So I will say that is a great sign for Hassel. He talked about it. I saw some quotes out there that he feels like himself again. He's getting his confidence back. And he even quoted our own Juan Soto at one point, talking about his confidence at the plate. And if you go up there confident, usually good things happen. So before that, though, in 2022, we were all saying that Robert Hassel III, he would be the first one to make his debut as a Washington National. Well, it is the end of 2024. He is still yet to make his debut. You've seen the 2023 number 2 overall pick, Dylan Cruz, make his debut. And Robert Hassel, while he did get promoted to AAA Rochester at the end of this season, really wasn't killing it in AA either. But one thing will stand true. I'm going to end on a positive note. If Robert Hassel III can get some solid production in, the Nationals, they'll be cooking with some gas. I can tell you that much. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. The World Series starts tomorrow, so you make sure to enjoy that. Until then, go Nats. I'll catch you on the flip side.